This morning I'm talking about hindrances that halt our life. Isn't that a catchy title? I'm still trying to come up with more exciting titles because when they go on YouTube, you know, I've noticed that the more exciting the title, the more people we have watching YouTube. So we'll see how we do this week. Let me start with this. In the Upanishads, a student comes to the teacher and asks, "What am I?" The teacher replies, "You are not the body." The student goes away for 6 months and thinks, "I am not the body," especially during allergy season. No, it doesn't say. Then he returns and asks, "What else am I?" No, I'm sorry, he didn't ask that at all. So sorry. I'm waiting to get new glasses. He asks the teacher, "What else am I not?" And the teacher replies, "You are not the emotions." For 3 years, he contemplates this. Then he returns to the teacher, where he is told that he is not even his thoughts. This student asks, "If thought evaporates, how will I exist?" And the answer is this: by asking and discovering what he is not what he is, he eventually discovers what he is. By asking and discovering what he is not what he is, he eventually discovers what he is. You get it? Okay, thank you. The Sanskrit term Upanishad refers to the student sitting down near the teacher while receiving esoteric knowledge. The general idea of the composition of the early Upanishads was in northern India. The 2 earliest texts of the Upanishads are pre-Buddhist. It is believed that they may be placed in the 7th and 6th centuries BCE, give or take a century or so. Yet, they are still timeless. The essential point underlying the student's questions of the teacher is to realize that until all of us can sacrifice our little self, we cannot find the greater self. We also hear other references in the teachings, such as renunciation and emptying yourself. Renunciation and emptying oneself means until you can sacrifice your little self, you will continue living in darkness, in illusion. In other words, in the unknown. This is very heavy, but also, for me anyway, it's enlightening. And this is where I wish we were having our 15-minute discussion this morning, because we could really elaborate on this, but alas. We will have to wait until the first Sunday in April. To live in darkness, to live in illusion, to live in the unknown means to live in the world of hindrances which halt our life. To live in darkness means that we are asleep. There was a Zen master who passed from this world when he was 61 years old. Fulfilling his life's work, he left a great teaching, far richer than most of the Zen masters. His pupils used to sleep in the daytime during midsummer. And while he overlooked this, He himself never wasted a minute. But when he was 12 years old, he was already studying philosophy. One summer day, the air had been so sultry that little Soryan stretched his legs and went to sleep while his teacher was away. 3 hours passed, when suddenly waking, he heard his master enter, but it was too late. There he lay, sprawled across the doorway, sound asleep. I beg your pardon, his teacher whispered, stepping carefully over Soryan's body, as if it were that of some distinguished guest. After this, Soryan never slept again in the afternoon. The teaching tells us that there are 3 major hindrances that prevent us from becoming greater. By analyzing and working on them, we can eliminate most obstacles on our path that prevent us from progressing. So the first obstacle is our criticism of others. This is very simple, but my gosh, so difficult to overcome. So the teaching tells us in so many ways and from so many different approaches how important it is that we stop criticizing others, because criticism of others prevents us from growing and expanding and becoming greater. We constantly criticize others, not only with our words, but with our feelings and thoughts and gestures, our speech and mannerisms as well. So I was thinking, and maybe you can too, about how do gestures indicate a criticism of others? So I was thinking, facial expression, or, we might lower our head or we might shrug our shoulders. So it's not even just in what we're saying, it's our reaction that displays some element of criticism. But then the toughest is our thoughts. So it's, we can see that this is not going to be the easiest obstacle to overcome, but when we realize what criticism of others is doing to ourselves, maybe now we're inspired to do something about it. When you criticize people, you are making a psychological effort to feel that you exist. See, this is a little different, and it takes some thinking, some pondering. Why is this? Because it makes you feel superior. It makes you feel as the one who has the knowledge, and the person that you're criticizing is the one who is ignorant. You see how that separates, one from the other? So how are we going to train our thinking? I don't really have time to get into it this morning, but just to lead us into a little bit of thought. And that is, if we don't agree with what we are hearing or what we are listening to or what the other person says, and we're thinking about it, we can ask ourselves, how important is it that we agree? Or how important is it that we are disagreeing? You can start to ask yourself questions like that. You can begin to think, where is that person coming from? And this is what I do, and this is what keeps me out of a lot of trouble. having Mercury in Gemini, you know, it's like those words would just like to spew right out of the mouth. And then they could be harmful. So, for example, if you're a Gemini, one of the virtues you're to practice is harmlessness. So how do you do that? Well, especially in our thoughts. So if you find yourself criticizing what another person says, your husband, your children, your teacher, the media, then remember, by criticizing others, these hindrances halt our life. So it is a hindrance. So we've got to find a way to break through this phenomena of criticizing others. And the best way that I know of, at least to start with, is by asking these kind of questions. Whenever you criticize, it is because you feel bankrupt within yourself. And you want to feel that you exist, that you are somebody. To exist, you feel that you must criticize someone. In doing this, you build concrete measures in your mind about a person, and essentially what you are saying is that he is bad, or she is bad, or he is stupid, or she is ignorant. This negative image, now listen to this, this is just amazing. This negative image is now in you. Is now in you. So this is something you're going to need to start observing. You know, don't just accept this by rote, but really through observation. So, for example, you may walk away this morning from this talk, I surely hope not, but if you do, you may say, you know, she just doesn't know what she's talking about. Pretty soon, what's going to go into your own brain is you don't know what you're talking about either. Through criticism, we eventually impress upon our minds the weaknesses of others. And you then gradually become, you yourself gradually become a weak person. This is why Soyen, the Zen master, after having been humbled by his teacher at a young age, realized that if his teacher could treat him as a distinguished guest, he would treat his own sleeping students in the same way until they awakened. If he spent his time criticizing his followers who had not yet renounced themselves, who were still sleeping in their vanity and ego, who were still controlled by their little self, then the teacher's criticism would be falling on what? On deaf ears. See? And instead of enlightening his sleeping followers, he would instead be wasting his time, see, hurting himself, and gradually making himself a weak person. The second obstacle is our own failures. We emphasize, think, feel, and write so much about our own failures that we mold ourselves into a concrete I am bad image. See, and bad can be the title of your piece of paper in which you are listing all the ways in which you are bad. See, I think we are moving into a new era where we are erasing these I am bad images, these I am bad thinking. The old Christian, you know, you're sinners, until you're saved, Well, how many times have we been saved? I have been saved so many times, I can't even count the times anymore. And yet people are still saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. And then all these images go into my consciousness, which then builds this character that is anything but beautiful and positive and successful. It's interesting. I'm thinking of this little analogy, which may not be that important, but you know, I have 4 dogs, 4 Shelties, 4 wonderful dogs, this and this and this and this, even though they're all from the same breed. And I've taken all of these dogs to obedience training, and I've learned more than they have. But what has really bothered me for so long is that the trainers are now not allowing us to reprimand our dogs. And being from the old school of reprimanding, how can they learn? Well, they are learning without me yelling and screaming at them and throwing them in the bathroom and shutting the door. It's just a slower process, but they're learning trust. It's not to say I don't tell them no. And I have this wonderful red can of air. It's called Pet Corrections. Well, I know, this is so funny. But you see, these are alternative methods. So this red can of air, when you depress the button, it releases the air, which makes a noise, and the can is red. I only had to use that can 3 times. Now, they were really ornery last night. I was so frustrated with them, and thinking about the obedience trainer saying, you cannot reprimand your dogs. So I got the can out, and I just walked through the living room with this red can, and they all just sit down and look at me. So I know it's funny, but this is the idea. If we're moving as a human being into a new era of being and thinking, and I can train these dogs with a little red can of air, we as human beings can think in new and better and innovative ways. So I just love this story about Soren, the Zen master, and how he treated his sleeping students, because he was humbled by his teacher and he didn't like being humbled. So that required from the teacher patience. So look at how this teacher was teaching patience to his students. And through his example, those students are going to awaken. See, this is the new era teaching. So no more concrete I am bad images. Now we have to find a way to dissolve them. Because you think you have failed, you make an image of failure. We do this by criticizing ourselves to make others exist. So do you see how it's like both sides of the coin works? When we make others exist, others seem more superior, better, more intelligent, more knowledgeable than ourselves, now we exist in them. You get it? Okay. A person condemns him or herself by saying, everyone is good except me. And because everyone is good, I have very little chance to exist in the wings of others, but I am nothing by myself. This is a great obstacle. If you will analyze and work it out, you're going to destroy these two huge obstacles within yourself. You really cannot escape from these two obstacles because they were part of, 2,500 years of training. But for this reason, they are inherent in your nature. So don't feel badly about it, because now we're going to change it. Now that we are conscious of these two obstacles, we're going to begin to destroy them. The third obstacle is the image that people are building in you. The third obstacle is the image that people are building in you. You are really beautiful, but because people are jealous of you, and because there are various interactions between you and them, such as you are stupid. Think of the parents that tell their children, you are so stupid. You're never going to make it. Don't do this. Don't do that. Just do what I tell you to do. If you don't, you are stupid. You absorb that image and say, I am stupid. Everyone is saying, I am stupid, so I must be stupid. I was thinking, and some of you are going to know who I'm talking about. I remember her telling me one day that she'd always wanted to sing. She said she just loved singing and always felt so free when she could sing, but she wouldn't ever sing around anybody because the teacher in junior high school told her, don't ever sing, you cannot sing. So that image began to build in her. She could not sing, she could not sing. And her last name was Singer. This is a true story. Imagine when she was able to move into our choir, and with the help of people around her, she could begin to sing. Well, she couldn't read notes. She never had a reason to learn how to read notes. So she would listen to what the notes that were singing around her. She could memorize the words, no problem. She could memorize, the sound. So she memorized the whole song when we're there reading the notes, reading the words, and trying to remember, or she just put it in her memory. So she turned that bad image into a good image with the help of people around and about her. Now, she couldn't hold a tune too well. And that's why that teacher told her what she did in junior high. But as long as she positioned herself between two other people, she would stay in tune. Some people say, I am stupid. Everyone is saying I am stupid. I can't sing, so I must be stupid. I am fat, so I must be ugly and sick. Then you become stupid and ugly and sick. Eventually you assimilate and digest and absorb whatever they say about you to such a degree that you play the game of having others direct you by remote control. We are on a spiritual path. This incarnation is part of our soul's journey. It is important for us to be free from these hindrances and to be awake, to become enlightened. A rabbi named Zusha, Z-U-S-H-A, told his students, when I die, God will not ask me, was I like Moses? Or was I like Joshua in my life? He will ask me, was I Zusha? to see with clarity and to respect what is here now in your life, to fulfill and offer your own inner gifts. This is the spiritual path. To let your lives be a deep expression of heartfelt values of the higher self, the heartfelt values of the higher self, to know what awakens you and to nurture it. This is your way. This is our way. Strive to not allow others to direct you by remote control. Don't think you are stupid because others have made you think you are. Don't be critical of others to make yourself exist. Here's a Buddhist story. A learned scholar set forth on a long and difficult sea journey. Desiring to impress the crew with the depth of his learning, he would stop and question the simple sailors as they went about their duties. "Tell me, my good man," he would ask a sailor, "have you studied philosophy?" The sailor would answer, "Oh no, I am just a simple sailor. I only know how to sail this ship from one shore to the other." Do you know this story? The scholar would reply, "You poor man, you have wasted half your life." The following day he would again ask another sailor, "Have you studied geometry, my good man?" But the sailor would reply, "No, I'm sorry, sir. I just rig the sails and steer the ship." The scholar again would shake his head in despair and say only, "You poor fellow, dwelling in ignorance, you are wasting much of your life." Day after day, the questions would go on. Have you studied geometry, anthropology, zoology, psychology? The sailor could only shake his head in denial. Then one night, the ship foundered, began taking on water in a storm. The scholar anxiously watched the crashing waves and held tightly to the mast. The sailor approached the scholar and asked him, "Have you, my good man, by any chance studied swimology?" In puzzlement, the scholar could only shake his head. "Well, that really is too bad," said the sailor. "You have wasted your whole life, for the ship is sinking." Do you see? We must all take a look at our lives and determine what in our life is the most essential, and also determine what is preventing us from progressing. What obstacles are hindering and halting us from advancing our consciousness? It is only your inner treasures, your talents, and your soul that can save your life. And it is renouncing ourselves, emptying ourselves, that allows the higher self to be at the helm of our ship. When your higher self leads you, when your solar angel guides you and directs you, when you hear the call and respond, you will be able to crush the hindrances that are halting your life. In each of these three obstacles, you are not yourself. You cannot be great, and this is why you have blocked yourself, or you have allowed others to block you. Now, the opposite experience can also happen to you. One day, during a conference, after giving a spontaneous lecture, Torkum, my spiritual teacher, stood up and made some responsive and public comments. In those comments, he said something that planted a seed in me. He said, I think that Jolene is a great leader. Well, I nearly fainted. Not only did I not see myself as a leader, I had no interest in being a leader. So I began asking myself, what did he see in me that made him say such a thing? And so I began to review different elements, different events in my life. And as I did this and began reviewing the journey up to that point, I began to see events and situations that could be and were recognized as leadership. To see the leadership in myself. And what that means to all of us is this. In other words, to recognize those moments that the rays of your soul are radiating out. That's leadership. I have been blessed with such people in my life, from school teachers to music teachers and to the teacher of my soul. It is important to think about those seeds that were planted in you by your soul teachers. Did they plant leadership seeds in you? In other words, did they ignite your soul? Did they shake you up to such a degree that you had no choice but to turn within and to commune with your purpose, with your life purpose, with your soul? Did they give you a vision? Did they encourage you? Did they challenge you? Did he or she at times reflect your higher self? Don't leave those seeds buried within the ground. Nourish them and let them grow. From this day forward, decide to be that vision. Day by day, inch by inch, grow until those beautiful seeds bloom in you, allowing you to become a person who is real and deep. A person who is beautiful and radiant. A person who makes a difference in others' lives. The question is, how great can you be? The answer is, as great as you want to be. There is no limit, as your essence is infinity. But there is a process that we must go through. We must bury the personality-derived self-image that we have of ourselves, or that others have built of you. Until you are dead to that self-image, you cannot bloom or actualize the archetype, the vision that is within you. I have so much going through, I can hardly wait till we have the 15-minute discussion so we can really do a PS to the lecture. So the first step for your future transformation is self-sacrifice. Unless a person sacrifices the little self, he or she cannot find his greater self. This refers to our self-image, our self-thought, our self-measures, which must be buried. When these are buried, they become the fertilizer that creates the possibility for the soul to grow. You are blocked by millions of self-images. These are images that others have built of you. Images that are the results of your failures. Once you remove these images, Your core is so beautiful. Now, our core is hidden in layers of obstacles. So this is why we have a process to go through, which is removing these images. So let me close with this quote. People say, I am so beautiful. I am doing meditation. I am reading and serving. Wonderful. But 5 months later, they are flat tires. Then you see people starting out slowly. Then at the middle of the race, they are inflamed. They have wings and beaks, and they start shouting. But toward the end, some accident takes them away. The ones who start steadily and continue steadily toward the end take the prize. And that is what we are going to be. So by asking and discovering what you are not what you are eventually discovering what you are.